Well, hello everyone. Good morning. I hope that you had a good weekend. Seems like the president's still kicking around, so that's good. That's good news. Matter of fact, let's check on our boy this morning, shall we? I haven't even I just got up and made some tea. The New York Times, 13 hours ago. Let's see what they have to say about things. I actually think. Oh God, oh God, I'm huge. Never mind. All right. As Trump seeks to project strength, doctors disclose alarming episodes. Mr. Trump's blood oxygen level dropped twice in the 2 days after he was diagnosed with the coronavirus. And that he had been put on steroids, suggesting his condition might be more serious than initially described. Yeah, I read that we're really not going to know how bad Trump is. I read a couple of doctors that had dealt with COVID a lot in New York and in Italy, and they were talking about how you're really not going to know how bad someone with his underlying conditions is until day 9, and we're day 5 today, I think. So it's going to be Thursday or Friday before we know whether he's going to be fine or not. Now, I don't think they discharged him, right? He just drove around yesterday. Discharged. Yeah, no. Could be discharged as early as Monday. I mean, they're going to keep saying that, right? His personal physician is going to keep saying that. But to me, it seems like he looks good. I watched the video of him. He put out a video of him like, with an open collar working and stuff. He looks good. I mean, he looks like he's going to be fine. I mean, this disease doesn't kill evil people. And nothing bad happens to bad people ever. So I like his chances. He'll probably be fine, But like I said, we won't know whether that's the case or not until like Thursday or Friday. I mean, we're not going to know that for sure. I wanted to show you guys a thing this morning. Some of you probably already saw it. It was like it went around quite a bit last week, into last week. But I had an interesting experience with it, and I'm wondering if like people that I know, or like people who grew up around me experience this similarly, and then I'll tell you a little more about it. So let me see if I can find it. Hold on a second. I gotta make sure that my audio is gonna play. I'm pretty sure it is, but I just want to make sure. Okay.
Some residents voiced concerns about traffic, others about overcrowding in their schools.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And some were worried about having low-income housing in their neighborhood.
Why did you pick this spot?
Nicole Humphrey is a local opponent of the development.
What is your concern when it comes to Section 8 and low income?
The lifestyle I feel like goes with Section 8 is usually working single moms, or people who are struggling to keep their heads above water. And it's not, I feel so bad saying that, but it's not, it's just not people who are, I guess, of the same class as us, which sounds bad, but I don't mean that in a bad way.
Some people would say, look, they maybe have not had the opportunities that their kids are not going to have the opportunities that your kids are going to have in this neighborhood.
Right.
Can they share in that?
The problem with that is I hear a lot of the unfair of, oh, we haven't been given this or not that, or we haven't been afforded things that you might have been afforded. I don't look at multimillionaires and think, why don't I have a yacht? Why don't I have a private jet? It's a mindset, I feel like.
Do you think that you maybe are stereotyping the folks?
Oh, I totally am, 100%. It's not, it works both ways. I'm definitely not a racist and I'm not bigot, but I think I hold a little bit of a stigma against people who are different. We don't want nomads. We don't want people who don't have roots. I just don't want that to be what my community is about.
Okay, so we'll talk about the actual content of that in a moment. But just my own personal experience, and I'm curious if people that I know personally or people that grew up in the same sort of area that I grew up in also see that and have this response. I know a million people like that. Basically every middle-aged white woman that I know is like that. Now, that could be the fact that, like, I grew up in the suburbs, and so, you know, but more specifically, I grew up in the town next to this one, where this lady's from. I know, I have family members that work in this city. Like, I know this area. And I know a million people like that. That was a perfectly normal conversation for me. Like, I saw her say that. I watched that. I actually saw somebody on their show this. And I think it was on, yeah, they watched it on the Majority Report. And they're all in New York. So they see this lady say this thing. And they go, holy shit, really? People still exist like this? Whereas my response to that was, oh, yeah. That's everybody I know. That's every adult that I know that lives in a house like that. I'm curious as to what, like, you guys' response is to that. I'm curious as to, like, what you guys think. You know? So, you know, comment later and tell me. But, yeah. You know, I saw that, and I'm like, this is just perfectly normal suburb shit. But then if you watch it again, if you see it, if you see what she's saying, you can see it unravel on her face. Like, she says it, and then it just kind of falls apart for her as soon as she says it out loud. So, for some backstory, here's what's going on. I found this story on NPR about the actual surrounding conditions of this video and what is happening. So, this is basically, the headline is Section 8 vouchers help the poor, but only if housing is available. So, it says more than 2 million families now use vouchers to keep from becoming homeless. So far, however, the program has not lived up to that promise, especially when it comes to women and children. Among voucher holders, a 2016 government study found fewer than 13% of female-headed households with children were able to move to areas with higher opportunity. Farron Giles is trying to beat those odds. She found a new online customer service job paying $11.50 an hour. It's a big break for her, but it's an hour-and-a-half bus ride away. Hello, goals and ambitions, she says, excited about the idea of finding a quiet place to raise her son. I can get a house or an apartment and it will be affordable for me and my children, she says. I don't have to depend on people. I don't have to go into abusive relationships. I don't have to sleep in my van. I don't have to have my kids going from school to school. They can know that this is ours. We don't have to keep moving. Now, in that video, that woman described nomads. She said, we don't want nomads here. Right? And this is what she's referring to. We don't want people that pick up and move every 6 months, and the community's always changing, and people are always moving in and out, and new kids are always coming into school, and yada 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 yada. That's what she's talking about, right? But these people, this person specifically, is clearly an indicator of a systemic reason why that's the case. And it has a lot to do with the fact that most of the money is allocated to people like that nut job that we just watched. So anyway, nationwide upscale suburbs like McKinney and Frisco, this development is in Frisco, just north of Dallas, have not always welcomed voucher holders. Nicole Humphrey, who lives a couple of miles away from Anderson's development, says she's opposed to the project. So this lady is trying to build, here's our hero, Miss Nicole. This lady here Terry Anderson, she's a real estate developer. She's trying to build a set of apartment complexes on the line between Frisco and McKinney here in Texas, right? And as part of building that apartment complex, she has set it up to where there's going to be, I think they said 13 Section 8 eligible apartments in these houses. So essentially what would happen is you would build a giant apartment complex, and these apartment complexes are 100, 150, 200 units. And 10% of those are going to go to people who have Section 8 vouchers. So people who get reduced housing, rent-controlled housing, which is basically like the government pays the full rent to the apartment complex, but then the renter pays the government a subsidy, a subsidized amount. So it may be, and it's based on their income. So it may be $300 a month. It may be $800 a month. It may be nothing. It just depends on the situation. Woo! Hot. But anyway, in that case, right, the real estate developer or the owner of the complex or whatever is fully compensated at market rate for their property. It's taken care of. And even if they aren't, they go into the deal knowing that and build those units knowing that. Now, this is a great program that we have that allows people who otherwise would not be able to financially be able to move out of the cities and into the suburbs so that their children go to better schools, and therefore their children grow up to be better citizens and pay more taxes and be a more valuable citizen to society. That's the reason that we do this. It also is a leftover program to help with segregation issues from the civil rights era, which was like, hey, yeah, we're not going to make it, yeah, sure, we'll rent to black people, but the rent's $1,800 a month. Or, yeah, we'll rent to you, regular working person that maybe isn't as fancy as all of us in our cool houses and stuff, but the rent's $1,800 a month. Because there's a certain type of person that we want living here. Right? Because if you're an apartment complex owner, and this is a good time to talk about how because of the way our system is built, there are business issues that come into play like this that are totally understandable. Look, if I'm in a highly competitive, because it's unregulated, real estate market, and I'm a real estate developer, and I develop apartment complexes, that's what I do, then it is in my interest, my personal interest, and the only way that I can stay in long-term business is if I go out and I build these enormous sprawling complexes. And I make as much money with as little overhead as possible, because that's the way that the market is set up. It's totally understandable that that's the goal, right? But in order to achieve that, you have to rent to a certain type of person. You have to rent to somebody who has very strong, stable income. You have to rent to somebody who will, if you just go by the data demographically, they will not mess up your rental property. They're not going to put holes in the walls. They're not going to let their dogs chew everything up. This stuff is all data points. You know who you want to rent to. And most of these people are like, yeah, I want to rent to transplants that work for a big, giant corporation. Because I know I'm always going to get my rent because it's subsidized through their employer. And I know that they're not going to tear shit up because they just moved here and that blah, blah, blah. And most of them are coming here single and their family's coming later and yada, yada. Like they know who they're looking for. And the easiest way for you to segregate, forgive the wordplay, the people that you want to rent from you and the people that you don't is price. Now, yes, there's still going to be a percentage of people who can afford it, but they're not the people that you're looking for, and you probably will rent to them. But that's a small number. Once you've jacked the price that high, it's a smaller and smaller number. And therefore, every time you turn over an apartment, it's less expensive to do so. You don't have to do so much renovation and maintenance and all that BS, and so your profit is higher, and you are making enough money to stay in business. right? Or to, if you are a big apartment conglomerate, then you are making enough money to pay off your stockholders, essentially, and show growth. This is the reason for insane fees and rent hikes and all that kind of stuff, is you've got to keep making money, because that's the way our system is built, and housing is not regulated properly in this country. So we have Section 8 to allow people to participate in suburban life, even if they are not as affluent as this lady. Right? Now, her complaint about this is that the population of Section 8 housing is largely single mothers who don't have time to be at home and cannot be with their kids. Right? Now, in a society that she imagines that America is, and a society that probably some people you know, and definitely some people that I know and am related to, think that America is, right? Her mom could work during the day, her kid comes home on the bus, and then the community just keeps an eye out and make sure that their kid is all right, and make sure that, you know, they're home by the time the street lamps turn off and all that dumb bullshit that boomers always say, right? But no, they're not interested in that because their lifestyle is different. She's a stay-at-home mom. For all intents and purposes, in order to live in a house like that, you're a single parent most of the time. Unless you are living in a real 1%er situation and your husband like owns something and it's passive income and yada yada yada. That's not generally the case. Generally the case is you live in a house like this, but your husband works 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Again, I grew up 8 miles from this lady's house. I know these people. Like, everybody in this neighborhood, you have two different kinds of people that live in this neighborhood. One is probably this lady whose husband works 60, 70, 80 hours a week and makes great money, and they live a great life in this beautiful home that she lives in. The second is a dude that owns, like, you know, some company, and he's making mailbox money, and he works 2-3 days a week from the home office. But that's not this lady, because the people whose husbands are at home working, mostly those women, they do other shit. They spend time with their husband, they spend time with their kids, they do like real like life building type stuff, like go on vacation quite a bit. Like they're happy people. They're mostly happy people, and they're not really hurting anybody more so than a regular rich person. But this lady, you can tell that her husband works a lot because she has made it her life's mission to like maintain the status of her neighborhood and shit. Her kids are at school all day. Her husband's at work all day. She needs something to do during the day, which is totally understandable. She's just she happens to have made it like, I'm going to advocate for keeping poor people out of my neighborhood. And the thing is like, this probably isn't even that close to her looking at the houses. This is probably several miles away from her home. Meanwhile, these people will allow a Walmart to be built anywhere. As long as it gives as long as it's a cheap deal. And the thing is, right, it's understandable. You have worked your whole, you or your husband or whatever, I don't know what her living situation is. I'm just making broad generalizations based on what I know about the area. But yeah, in theory, you've worked your whole life in order to afford a lifestyle that allows you to stand in front of your Cadillac and your $800,000 home and talk to a journalist about how you don't want poor people to be able to live down the street from you because they don't live the same lifestyle and you don't like it. Right? Yeah, maybe you have worked your whole life for that. But you haven't worked harder than what's her name? Than Farron Giles. You've worked harder than this lady? You've worked harder than her? A single mother in the inner city taking a customer service job making $11.50 an hour, and she considers that a big break, and that's her only source of income, and she's supporting a child on that. Do you know what $11.50 an hour is? That's $1,840 a month before taxes. Could you support a child on $1,840 a month before taxes? You dumbass. Because she gets that off at the end. When the journalist, who looks horrified, I mean, she looks horrified, the journalist, that this is happening live to her. Here, let me mute this.
I don't look at multimillionaires and think, why don't I have a yacht? Why don't I have a private jet? It's a mindset.
It's a mindset. I'm telling you, the more the stream goes on, the more that like the purpose of this stream becomes very, very clear. It's a mindset. Listen, again, I don't know her living situation. I'm not going to comment on what her like individual living situation is with her husband and how they pay their bills and all that kind of stuff. That's really none of my business. But to argue that the two of them somehow were just more virtuous and worked harder, and therefore they are allowed to live in a place that has better schools and better access to healthcare and better water and better law enforcement. The idea that simply because she is somehow more virtuous and worked harder and did really rolled up her sleeves, man, and got her mind right and read some self-help books and really just did the good, like dug ditches and shit, really did like the American dream. The idea that she is somehow more, this dumbass is somehow more virtuous and somehow more deserving of living in a place where her kids are going to have a decent future than someone else who the only problem she has described with them is that they are nomads and that they have a different lifestyle and that a lot of them are single mothers. Those are the only problems that she's brought up with these people. And the thing is, right, she says this, and then the journalist is like, hold on, fam. Wouldn't you say that you're being, you're stereotyping? And she goes,
Maybe are stereotyping the folks.
Oh, I totally am. 100%. It's not. It works both ways.
It works both ways. You know, listen, I'm totally stereotyping them. I'm totally writing off everybody that gets Section 8 housing as a nomad and a brokey and a complete dredge on society that I don't want living anywhere near me or sharing in the benefits that my children get from living in my community. I don't even want them to get the benefits of my property taxes. That's how little I give a shit about them. But it works both ways. You know, it's both ways. You know, they want education and I want to deny them that. And then my favorite part.
I'm definitely not a racist and I'm not bigot, but I think I hold a little bit of a stigma against people who are different.
Define the word bigot. Now, here's a better challenge. Define the word bigot without using the exact words, any of the words that she just said. I feel like I'm not a bigot. I just feel like I hold a stigma towards people who are different. That's the definition of being a bigot. That is, if I had a dictionary out here, I would open it for you and go to bigot and it would say that. Like that is the textbook definition of bigot. And this is there's a video from like the 50s or something, 50s or 60s that I saw a few weeks ago, where this lady's basically saying like, we can't integrate we can't integrate our neighborhood because the blacks are bringing the devil with them, or something like that. Like she's standing out in front of this newly built like subdivision type thing, you know, like Potter's Farm looking shit, where and they're interviewing her, and they're basically saying like, you know, why it says whites only on it, I'm pretty sure, and you know, why can't they integrate or whatever, and she just goes off on this long thing about like, as soon as you start doing that, they're bringing the devil with them, and it'll ruin our neighborhoods, put our children at risk, and blah 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 blah. That's the whole ballgame. Now, they recognize that you can't just say that, and they probably don't. This lady probably does not feel that way. Like, she probably has black friends. She probably has, I was going to say poor friends, but she probably doesn't. I mean, let's be real. But, like, you know, she knows people that aren't affluent. I'm sure there are people within her own family that aren't affluent like her, that aren't able to live in an $800,000 house in the suburbs and drive a Cadillac and all that kind of stuff. I'm almost positive that that is the case. So she encounters people, you know, and if nothing else, dude, she goes to Starbucks every day and gets her coffee served to her. I mean, she knows that these people exist. And so she doesn't hold a personal disdain for them, but she has been taught through decades and decades of patriarchy and hegemonic white culture that, like, if you allow integration, it will fuck up your life. And these people are this lady right here, specifically this lady and everyone that is like her, which is a decent subset of this country. These are the people that got Trump elected in 2016. Not people that voted for Jill Stein. Not people that didn't vote. Not people that voted for Bernie and then voted for Trump. No. These people. And these people, again, are the whole ball game for the election. Do you think Biden has moved them? Do you think, I mean, this just happened last week. This interview. Do you think it was worth abandoning any sort of policy set whatsoever and trying to actually help people in order to get this lady? In order to get her vote? Listen, yeah, she might personally, and I know I'm picking on this lady, but, like, so what? She's an asshole. This lady's mind is not being changed about Trump. Like, she's not looking at Trump. The calculation for people like this is not, I look at Trump and I see him being rude and I see him being a danger to democracy, and therefore, you know what, I gotta vote country over party and I'm gonna go vote for Joe Biden. That's made up. That dynamic is made up. Like, maybe that happens 1 in a million Republicans, maybe. But, like, really, these people are not, the Lincoln Project people don't exist in the wild. They're not real. That is a media creation. It's a media creation in order to encourage more and more people to maybe think about doing that, but people aren't doing that en masse. No. Because we have an incredibly, we have the most polarized electorate that we've ever had in the history of the country, and you think that people are just, like, based on the idea of just, like, shame, that they're going to be like, oh yeah, you know what, I was wrong, let me put down my weapons and go to the other side. No. So this lady and people like her, they look at Trump, and their calculation is not and will never be, he's too rude, I'm not going to vote for him. It is, he's rude, and that's unfortunate. I wish that he didn't talk like that, and I wish that he wasn't so brazen about it, because it makes it uncomfortable for me to have political conversations out loud in public, because I either have to lie and say that I don't really engage in politics and that I don't really pay attention to what's going on and just brush it off, or I have to defend Trump, and that puts me in a socially awkward position. And I don't like that because he makes it hard to defend him. Right? That's her calculation when she sees Trump. But what makes it okay, and what will keep this lady and other people like her voting for Trump, is that he's doing what they ultimately want. Because the end game to this little speech that this lady just gave on morality and class and nomads and whatever the hell else, this little speech that she just gave, the end game of that is Trump. Like allowing people like this, allowing people like this to hoard the wealth of our society, to lord over the resources of society like tyrants, is what gets you Trump. Because Trump is saying what this lady thinks out loud. Now, let me be clear. I don't think she would ever say, we got to protect the suburbs. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Like, I don't think she would say any of that. Even in her, like, quietest, most alone moments. I don't think. I think that she's ultimately probably a very good, compassionate person and a parent and, like, whatever, right? Like I said, I know a bunch of people like this. But when she hears when the looting starts, the shooting starts, and we got to protect the suburbs, and the Mexicans are coming, and they're rapists and they're murderers and all that kind of shit, right? What she hears is, oh, good, I'm a protected class under this administration. Under this administration, they are looking out for my safety. That's what she hears. Now, again, it makes it very uncomfortable for her. Like, this lady, you can see it in her face. Like, at the beginning of this. Watch.
Component of the development.
What is your concern when it comes to Section 8 and low income?
The lifestyle, I feel like, that goes with Section 8 is usually working maybe single moms or people who are struggling to keep their heads above water. And it's not, I feel so bad saying that, but it's not.
Psycho. Psycho, psycho, psycho. She realizes it right there. As soon as she says they're just trying to make ends meet. Right? She realizes, here, one more time.
And it's not.
Just trying to keep their head above water is what she says.
Or people who are struggling to keep their heads above water.
Okay, now she says that. Now keep in mind that her theory of America, probably her parents' theory of America, and their parents' theory of America, was that if you worked hard, yes, there would be a time when you were just keeping your head above water, but eventually, if you keep working hard and you keep doing what you're supposed to be doing, then you will make it, my friend, and you will be successful, and you will move out to the beautiful suburbs just like me. Right? And she just realized, as she was talking, that she just threw that entire ideology under the bus in order to say this nonsense. In order to say this, she had to beat back and crush down 30 years of her own ideology and her parents' ideology and their parents' ideology. And she had to realize in a split second, literally in the blink of an eye, she was forced to realize that the American dream's not real. And that there is now, granted, I don't know that she's making all these calculations in this split moment, but she is now, that this is on video and she's seen it, is like, oh, there are two Americas, and I'm on one side. I like the side that I'm on, and I really don't want to be on that side. But there are two Americas. And she realizes this here, and it's why she laughs like a psycho.
And it's not, I feel so bad saying that, but it's not, it's just not people who are, I guess, of the same class as us, which sounds bad, but
Okay, same class as us. This is the moment I was talking about before. Do you see? I paused this perfectly. Do you see her face? She wants this journalist to save her. Because she just said they're not the same class as us. And I know that sounds bad. And she wants the journalist to come in and say, well, they're not from the same economic background. Or put a nice little buttery, or, well, maybe they haven't had the same opportunities that you've had. Like, put a nice buttery PC spin on it, and then she'll go, yeah, that's what I meant. But what she means is they're not the same class as us. It's just that simple. And like I said, this little segment, I would love, oh my God, I would love to talk to this lady now. I would love to hear what this lady has to say about this now. Because one of two things has happened. Because this was fairly public. One of two things has happened. One, she's seen this, and she went, oh, well, they took me wildly out of context, and, well, that's not what I meant, blah, 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 and she's brushed it off and gone back to life normally. The second thing that could have happened is that she's seen this. She was woefully embarrassed by it because she never realized that this is what she sounded like when she was saying this nonsense, because by virtue of her living conditions, she lives in an echo chamber with nothing but ideas like this. And so it's possible that she saw this and went, oh shit, this sounds really bad. I feel bad about it. But you know what, my life's pretty great, fuck it, and just shoved that shit back down. There's no way that she saw this and was like, oh God, wow, I should really, like, do something. I should really be, like, better. No. No way. No way on earth. Like, instead of organizing against Section 8 housing, I'm going to like, organize for more Section 8 housing, or better Section 8 housing that doesn't look like shit next to my nice house, that won't mess up my property values. Or I'm going to push for better housing and better schooling in those communities so that those people stay the fuck out of my neighborhood. No. She's never going to do that. But that would be that'd be a movie or something. But that's not what's going to happen. No. The only way that she had any sort of redemption was for like 13 seconds. She was like, wait. Man, that's bad. If I was living in those conditions, I would want my kids to have the same opportunities that my kids have now. But there's nothing I can do about it. Fuck it. Like, you gotta imagine that, like... And she keeps saying, it sounds bad. It sounds bad, she keeps saying. It sounds really bad. She can't tell you why it sounds bad, but she just keeps saying, oh no, it sounds bad. Yeah, why, lady? There are two Americas. And she figured out tea. Morning tea. She figured out that she was on one side. And the nice thing is, she's on the nicer side to live on. Now, the cost of that is that she has to take this defensive position, right? And she has staked out her ground. Sorry, my allergies are killing me this morning. She has staked out her ground on one side already. Like, she's saying, like, oh no, this is my land and I'm going to defend it. This is my side and I'm going to defend it. Now, I get it, right? There is very little incentive for this lady to do anything about the problems that she's talking about or make the correct decisions. Like, I'm not I'm not advocating for this individual lady. I guess I should have said this up front. This individual lady can't do anything about the problem that we're talking about here. Like, she can do something by screaming about it happening and get rid of the Section 8 housing. She could do that. She could use her privilege to bitch enough with enough other privileged people to get rid of the Section 8 housing. That can happen, right? But she can't do anything in the other direction, because individually, because the system is set up as such that, like, where would she even begin? First of all, she would have to have a radical brain transformation where she realizes the problem, she cares enough about it to be willing to put her husband, and her children's financial security at risk in order to go and use her own money and resources and time to lobby for all the things we listed earlier: better education system in the inner cities, better housing, more Section 8 housing where she lives, more teachers, more whatever, right? Whatever she thought would be the best thing to do. She would have to mobilize her own resources and her own time. Plus, she's going to take a social penalty for doing that, because if she's like this, everybody she lives with is like this. And they're going to be like, what? But then, in order to get any sort of political action done, even from her privileged standpoint, she's going to have to organize a lot more privileged people. And they're not going to want to do that, because they haven't had this earth-shattering experience that she's had, which is just being outed as an asshole on television. And so it's built. That is why, like, collectivism is important, is because as a society we have to take the power of making these decisions away from people like this and be able to say, like, hey, look, dude, I get it, man. You're upset because there's going to be some public housing near you. I'm sorry. But those people are also human beings and deserve to have somewhere to live. And you can't just build a gated community and hide from the problems that are created by you amassing the sort of wealth that allows you to build the gated community. You know? Like, essentially these people are building a house on, like, an inlet, right? They're building a house on an inlet and jutting out into a very raucous body of water. Okay? And people keep coming by and telling them, hey, eventually this house is going to have a problem. This house is going to get hit by the water. It's going to be washed out. If you have a big storm, it's going to be destroyed. Like, this is probably not the best place to do this. And you are clearly ignoring everything around you in order to have this thing that you say you want, which is this beautiful house on the coast or whatever, right? But in order to do that, you are going to destroy what you say you want, and you're kind of ruining the lives of everybody else, because we're going to have to come and fix this. It's a very similar dynamic to what these people are doing, because these people are essentially saying, okay, I won. I got the money. I got the income. I got the money. I got the job. I got the financial security. I'm in a good place. And they do most of that in urban areas. And then as soon as they've done it, they hit the ejector seat and withdraw their tax money. Like, sure, there's still payroll tax from their employer or whatever, but they withdraw their property taxes, they withdraw their sales tax, and they take that shit out of the cities and they take it to the suburbs. And the suburbs uses those property taxes and those sales taxes to do things like build dope schools, build dope hospitals, build dope roads for those areas. And in the meanwhile, the people who don't have that luxury, because they can't afford to buy a Cadillac that allows them to drive 80, 90 miles a day to go to work, those people get screwed. And there's an economist from hold on, I'm not going to say wrong because he's either Scottish or Irish, and I know that people really, really don't like getting that messed up. He's Scottish. He's an economist and political scientist. His name is Mark Blyth. He's the professor of international political economy at Brown, and he says something fairly often that I really like, which is the Hamptons are not a defensive. The Hamptons are a low-lying area. They are not a defensible position. And when the people come for you, the Hamptons will not stand. Which is basically to say, yes, you can amass a mountain of wealth and a mountain of things. But the only thing that is between your mountain of money and your mountain of things and you and the rest of society that you are taking that from, because again, it's a zero-sum game, is your $800,000 house or your gated community or your villa or your house in the Hamptons. And you're either going to allow a redistribution of resources that improves people's material lives in the society that you live in and participate in and reap the benefit of through through regulation, through better tax laws, through more equitable funding of things like education and healthcare. You're either going to allow that and take your licks and be like, my taxes are 10% higher this year. Or you are going to make the conditions so bad for so many people that they will come and take it all from you. And maybe not you personally, but your class of people. We are living under conditions that are pretty unique for a modern society. There is a pandemic sweeping through this country, 40,000 cases a day. The president is currently incapacitated and has done such a good job between him and our media class of dismantling the ability for the American people to believe anything that comes in the form of news at all from anyone, that we don't know if he's going to live or not. We are embedded in a quagmire, a $6, $7, $8 trillion quagmire in the Middle East that is unresolvable. A Kobayashi Maru, if you will. That is completely unfixable and is draining society's resources. The infrastructure in this country is crumbling while we are experiencing the climate conditions that we are. I mean, this is a confluence of historic events, a confluence of things that are unique in history, and we don't have a representative class in this country that is advocating for any sort of restructuring at all, or even the courtesy of an investigation into said conditions. Like even an acknowledgement that things are bad. I mean, there is no one with actual power to do anything that is anywhere near in touch with regular people. Think about this lady here, right? She probably lives in a $700,000 or $800,000 house in a Texas suburb. Okay. That being said, her husband is probably making a 6-figure salary because she said she stays at home. So he's making a 6-figure salary for sure to be able to afford that, and probably a really strong 6-figure salary, right? And her understanding of people that she literally orders coffee from, is served by at dinner, delivers her Uber Eats when she needs it, coaches her kids' soccer teams, or whatever. People that she is not that far away from. In a personal basis. On a personal basis. On an economic basis, there's a mile-wide gap, of course. But people that she is not personally and geographically that far away from. And this is how far separated she is from them in her head. She is so far, and people like this are so far removed from what life is like for regular people that they think that it is okay to say stuff like this. Like, it's a mindset thing. If you just woke up and were more positive every day, you'd live in a dope house like me. It's all mindset. It's all just positivity and believing in yourself. She is so removed from the experience of regular people, and she lives down the street from them, that she holds these views. Think about that and hold that in your mind for a moment. And then recognize that she is a brokey compared to somebody like Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or Donald Trump or Mitch McConnell or Ted Cruz or Joe Biden, for that matter. Now, Joe Biden is he's probably the poorest of the bunch, and he is that is completely his fault. Every opportunity to enrich himself came up, and he did all the things they wanted him to do anyway. He just didn't personally benefit like the rest of those jackasses. So he's just a sap. But yeah, I mean, think about how emotionally and spiritually disconnected from regular, everyday people. Like I said, people that she orders coffee from every morning. I mean, she has real, live interactions every day with people of the class that she's talking about. White, black, brown, who cares? Because I don't think she's making a race distinction here. She's not. She didn't say anything about black people. She's not making a race distinction explicitly. She's saying class, even if they're white. And I remember this dynamic when, I'll tell you a personal example of this, because again, I grew up in a house about 8 miles away from this lady's front door. And when we, as a family, were going to buy that house, I remember I was probably 10, 11 years old. I remember looking at several areas of town, right? And everybody watching this is not a new experience for anyone watching this, I'm sure. I'm just, I don't know, clarifying. I remember driving around town because at the time I went to a school in like South Dallas. And now we lived in North Dallas. We lived in like the Addison area, and it was fairly It was fine. I mean, you know, we didn't live in an affluent neighborhood or anything. We lived in a fairly middle class neighborhood. But in close proximity to like the gated community areas, you know what I mean? Like we were kind of the acceptable bunch to have around the corner from the neighborhood, basically, to this lady. And you know, we were by no means like wealthy or anything. And so when we kind of, I guess, made it or whatever, and both of my parents were working when that was the case. We're working full-time jobs. Like this lady, she says she doesn't work. Both my parents were working full-time jobs. Like I went home on the bus and I was home for several hours by myself every day until my parents got home. And so they had made the decision that they wanted to move out into the suburbs, like I said, in this area. And we were going to move, we're going to buy our first house as a family. Like I said, I think I was 10 or 11 at the time. And we went on several occasions. Another family member of ours lived in the area, and we went with him on several occasions and drove around to look at houses. And I remember very distinctly that within about 2 or 3 trips to this town, my parents had nailed down, like, this is the poor area of town, this is the wealthy area of town, this is where all the old people live in town, and this is where all the like minorities live in town. Now, granted, I don't think that they would come out and say that, but it was very clear that that was the case. Like, it was very clear that we either wanted to live in the wealthy part of town or in the part of town with the old people. Because that is how white people have been trained for 50 years, 60 years. And yeah, it's off the books segregation. So this dynamic exists. It exists, and it's not even that uncommon. Like, I'm sure that everybody watching this has had a similar experience with somebody that they're related to, and somebody that or somebody that they're friends with, or somebody that lives in their own community. The idea of like white flight is real. And white people are starting to, and like I said, I don't know that it's a race thing specifically, but I think just upper class people in general are starting to realize that like there's nowhere else to go. In the 60s and 70s, we flew out of the inner cities and out to the suburbs because we didn't want to live with nomads and shit. And then they came out to the suburbs, and now those people have had enough time to where like you've got some generational wealth that's starting to accrue. You've got some people who whose families maybe lived in the inner cities and were pretty broke, but now they have enough money to move out to the suburbs and buy a home. And they're seeing that and going like, oh shit, well, this was like our line of last defense. Where do we go from here? Back to the cities, which they will, because insane high-rise gentrifying nonsense. $2,400 a month for a 2-bedroom shit. So, anyway, I just thought that was an interesting dynamic. I thought that it was very interesting to see, I don't know, like other people react to people talking like this. I mean, this lady is not a human being. She has been so alienated and desensitized from her community by her own wealth that she has no idea what other people's life experience is. And like I said, if she's this far removed from regular people, imagine how far removed Congress is. Now, that's getting better, and maybe in a few years it'll be even better. We don't know. That's all going to depend on, like, whether or not Trump accidentally, like, falls asleep at the nuclear button, or Joe Biden accidentally, like, drools on the fucking Yosemite detonator, or whatever. Like, who knows? You know, like, hopefully that dynamic changes, and Congress get the new crop of people coming into Congress and systematically defeating these boomer incumbents that don't represent anybody accurately. Hopefully our dynamic in Congress changes and it's more representative, but that's not a guarantee. There's no way to make sure that that happens. It's a hope at this point. Well, there is a way to make sure that that happens. You fund these people and you elect them and you pay attention to the races. But there's no way to ensure that the new crop of people that come into the Congress are going to be progressives. You could get a bunch of nutbag right-wingers. It's all going to depend on how the country reacts to the crises, multiple, that we are dealing with right now. Someone asked me the other day while we were talking about Trump, and I wanted to touch on this before I got off, whether or not Trump being sick is good for Trump. As in, like, well, because originally the thing was like, he's bullshitting, he's not sick. He's just trying to get the conversation off of a whole bunch of other shit. And so this was before he went to the hospital. And so he's just tweeting about it, and we haven't heard anything else about it, and he's just trying to, like, do some wild shit. Well, then he had to be hospitalized, and so that kind of went out the window, obviously. But then the question was, does it help him electorally, politics-wise, for him to be sick and get better, right? Obviously not be sick and then die, but be sick and get better. And to that I say no. I actually don't think so. And I know that that's an unpopular opinion. I know that a lot of people are like, he's going to get sympathy from this and this will help his polling. I agree. I think that I agree with that. I agree with the fact that, like, yeah, he might pick up 1 or 2 or 3 points in the polling when he gets out of the hospital and when everybody sees that he's doing okay and he's going to be fine, which is probably the case. Yeah, I think that will help him in the polls, but it's not going to help him electorally. If anything, it might hurt him, because his entire strategy has been like, no, I'm big and strong. I'm too big and strong to get sick. That's why I don't have to wear a mask. Joe has to wear the biggest mask you've ever seen, but I don't have to wear a mask because I'm big and strong, and I'm big and strong and American, and that gives me immunity to the China virus. Like, that was basically his theory. It was like, I don't have to wear a mask. It makes me look effete. I don't have to wear a mask. I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to, like, but the fact that he was fine on national television on Tuesday, then we hear nothing from him on Wednesday. He goes to a donor thing on Wednesday after testing positive. We don't know anything about Wednesday. And then Thursday at like 1 a.m., we get a tweet that's like, hey, I have coronavirus. And then Friday, he's in the hospital. That's a pretty quick, like, even for people who aren't paying attention directly to this, like, most people saw him on television Tuesday night. And then on Friday, he's in the hospital. I mean, that's pretty jarring for most people. And especially for his crew who are like, wait, not only is it real, but it's really fucking him up. What do we do? For his people, it scrapes away a couple of those, like, oh, he's big, burly, and American and strong. Nothing can happen to our great leader type stuff. I don't know. It remains to be seen, honestly. But I don't think it helps him. I don't know if it hurts him. I'm still on the fence about that. But I'm pretty sure it doesn't help him. Because even if he gets out, what he's going to do, right? The way that he could really lock this thing up, if he wants to win the election, I hope he's not watching, but if he wants to win the election, here's what he does. He's sick, he gets better. He gets out of the hospital, he makes a national address. And he says, look, I have been discharged from Walter Reed Hospital. I want to speak directly to the American people. And I want to tell you, this is going to be so funny, me saying this, as if Trump would ever say this. But I'm just playing a hypothetical. And I want to speak to you right now about the fact that this is serious. This is real. I made a mistake. I underestimated personally what the reach and the danger of coronavirus was. I apologize for being so cavalier about it. Not taking it some people say that I didn't take it seriously. I'm sorry for putting off that vibe or whatever. And we're going to move forward together as a country. I have authorized X stimulus, X PPE, X program. I've authorized all of this stuff that we're going to line up and we're going to take care of this problem. We're going to have a vaccine in the next 3 months. We're boom, 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 boom. And he would win the election. But everybody knows he's not going to do that. He's going to immediately have an in-person rally where like 10% of the people there will be wearing a mask. And he's going to shout and scream about how it's not that big a deal. Look, I'm 74 years old. I'm 74 years old. I'm obese. They said I would die. They said I would die for sure. They said I was a goner. But I made it. Don't we love it? Don't we love it, folks? Don't we love it? I made it. I made it. Look at me. I made it. Look. I got the best care. Some say the best in the world. And then everybody's just going to roll their eyes. I mean, here's the thing, right? He's going to lose. I'm sorry. Like, I know that there's a lot of this whole, like, the polls were wrong in 2016. And the polls said the polls said he would lose in 2016, and he ended up winning. Yes, you are correct. But I've read the polls. I've read the polls from 2016, and I've read the polls from now. And I will tell you, it's not the same. Joe Biden is leading by way more at the same time, but he's also leading by more in the places where Trump slithered in and barely pulled it out before. And the dynamic is very different. People fail to realize that Hillary Clinton was a deeply, deeply, deeply disliked person in this country. People did not like her. Democrat, Republican, Independent, doesn't matter. People did not like her. Now, you could chalk that up to just American misogyny. You could chalk that up to decades of the Republicans coming up with insane things to investigate her for and to drag her through the mud and to make her out to be a murdering, literal nutbag. You could chalk that up to leftists saying that she's a war hawk and that she's not interested in helping people's material needs and she's a plutocrat. You could also do that. But the reality is, she, for whatever reason, she was a deeply flawed, deeply disliked candidate. And because of that, she severely underperformed her polls. Whereas Trump overperformed because Trump was liked. And crucially, he was liked by people who don't normally participate in the process. And so he got a bump over and above the polls because he got a lot of people to register and go vote, to own the libs or whatever. Joe Biden does not have that same dynamic. People like Joe Biden, on the whole. And you can say what you will about him being a bad person, of course, and, being racist and whatever, sure, all that stuff's true. But people like him. He's likable. People remember him as, like, Obama's guy. And that's very powerful in this country, whether you like to admit it or not. And so the reality is, the dynamic is not the same. Yes, Trump might overperform his polls 1 or 2 points. That won't get it done. That won't get it done. And so he is going to lose. He is especially going to lose if he spends the next week in the hospital a month before the election. Because now, the fact that Trump has COVID kind of lops off the strategy that they were trying to build which was like, Joe Biden is not in a healthy enough condition to be able to run the country, which I agree with. But now you guys are on even footing. You're literally in the hospital. Like, you are literally incapacitated less than 30 days before the election. So, even if he comes out fine, I still think people are going to, there's a reason that you're not getting pictures of Trump in a hospital bed. They know. They know how much of an impact this is going to make on their election chances. They know how much of an impact this is going to make on the race as a whole. Now, they don't care because they're going to try to steal it regardless. But they know the impact that Trump being in the hospital has. So, yeah, I wanted to answer that question and just say, like, they know, they're not stupid. And I think you have some inner turmoil in the White House, to be honest. I think you have people who are concerned about continuity of government. I think that you have people who are like, wait, hold on. And because so much of the narrative in this White House goes directly through Trump, like, you don't have Kellyanne Conway and the other staff are not coming out and saying things that they haven't directly spoken to Trump about. He drives that ship. And in the absence of him being able to, like, coordinate that, because people can't be in as direct contact with him, he's constantly under supervision of doctors and stuff like that. Because that's the case, they are scrambled. They don't know how to put a message out. They don't know how to handle, like, should we say is it good for us to say that he's going to be fine? Or is it good for us to say that he's not doing well? I don't know what's happened. Like, me personally, I don't know what condition he's in. Like, he looks fine. He looks okay. But like I said, we won't know anything until the end of the week, as far as, like, how good or how bad he is. I do think if they discharge him, that would be insane. Because he's clearly symptomatic. He's clearly symptomatic and therefore contagious. The safest place for him to be in right now is under the care of a doctor with limited people around him, not spreading it to everybody. Now, I can understand they want to get him out of the hospital because you're about to go through a weekday and therefore a news day of the president in the hospital. They haven't had to do that yet because he went in on Friday and spent the weekend. So they're going to want to get him out today. But if he's contagious, I don't see how you could possibly do that. Now, granted, they got him out and they put him in a car yesterday and probably infected a Secret Service agent to drive him around in a very dictator type thing to do. But I don't know. Again, I have completely taken the black pill, and I'm so sure that he's going to be totally fine. That if anything, COVID is going to add 10 years to his life. That he'll probably win the presidency, that like, they'll immediately overturn Roe v. Wade. Like, I'm totally black-pilled on this whole thing, and it is going to, in my mind, it's all going to be the worst outcome. But trying to be reasonable, I'm just saying that, like, he'll probably be, he's probably hurting a little bit. Man, I read a report that his blood oxygen level was under 90 when they took him to Walter Reed. That's very bad. That's very, very bad. So, all right, y'all. Well, I think that's enough now. That was like an hour and 15 minutes. I'm really getting long-winded on these morning ones. I hope somebody's getting a benefit out of it, but we really had to just completely trash and drag that insane lady from our area. So, y'all have a good day.